Early one morning, Anancy the spider went to help Grandma Spider. He knocked on her door. "Grandson," Grandma said as she greeted him with a hug. Anancy blushed. "Hello, Grandma." "Grandma Spider," said Anancy, "do you have any work for me today?" "Sure," said Grandma Spider. "I want you to plant some beans in my garden." Grandma showed Anancy what she wanted done in the garden. Then she went back into the house to fix some lunch. Anancy dropped beans into the small holes in the ground. The sun grew warm and then hot. By noon, Anancy was limp with the heat. "It's hot and I'm getting thirsty." Anancy pulled the brim of his hat down to shield his face from the sun. Grandma Spider came to the porch with a large pitcher of fresh lemonade and called to him, "Anancy, here's a cool drink for you." "Thank you, Grandma," he said as he drank the cold, sweet lemonade. "I'm making your favorite meal," said Grandma. "I'm cooking spicy beans. They'll be ready soon for our lunch." "I love your spicy beans," said Anancy. He finished his lemonade and went back to his work. Grandma Spider returned to the kitchen. Grandma Spider looked for her bean spices, but the tins were empty. She called, "Anancy, I need spices. I must go to the market. Will you be okay?" "Sure, Grandma," he answered. "I'll be here in the garden." "Stay away from that pot of beans. The beans are too hot and the pot is too heavy. You understand me, Anancy?" "Yes, ma'am, I understand you. I won't go near that pot of beans." The smell of yummy beans rose from the pot and drifted out the window right into Anancy's nose. Anancy's nose twitched and his mouth began to water. He followed the smell into the kitchen until he was standing at the stove with the pot of beans right under his nose. "Grandma said not to go near these beans. I better leave." He turned to go back to the garden, but the smell pulled at him. "I'm sure it's all right just to smell the beans," he said to himself. Anancy lifted the lid and hot steam filled the air. Anancy took a deep breath of the steam. "I'm sure it's all right to just taste the beans. Grandma won't have to know." He dipped Grandma Spider's big spoon into the pot. Anancy blew on the hot beans and tasted them. He spooned up some more. Slurp. He spooned and blew. Slurp. He spooned and blew and slurped up spoonful after spoonful of the beans. Grandma will come back soon. I don't want to get caught, Anancy thought. I know. I'll put the beans in my hat and Grandma won't know. Anancy took off his hat and filled it full of steaming beans. As he put the lid back on the beans, he heard shouts from the garden. "Hey, hey, get out of Grandma Spider's garden!" Anancy saw a flock of birds eating the beans he had just planted. Some of the neighbors were waving and yelling. The scared birds flew through the open kitchen window. The neighbors ran to the porch and pounded on the door. "Get out of Grandma's kitchen, you nasty birds! Anancy, let us in to help you!" Anancy didn't know what to do. He had to hide the beans. "Anancy, let us in!" the neighbors yelled. The birds screeched and flapped, and Anancy looked around quickly. Anancy did the only thing he could think to do. He pulled the hat full of hot beans on his head and opened the door. The neighbors came in yelling and screaming and chasing out the flapping birds. When everything was quiet, they turned to see if Anancy was all right. There stood Anancy with tears streaming down his face. Anancy, did the birds hurt you? Anancy. The birds hadn't touched him, but the hot bean juices soaked his beautiful hair. He tried to sound cheerful when he said, "Thanks, everybody. I'm fine. The birds are gone. You can all go home now." The neighbors looked at Anancy. "Anancy, what's wrong? Why are you sweating? Were you scared? Were you hurt?" "No, I'm just hot and sweaty from working in the garden. I have to finish now, so you can go." The beans were burning Anancy's head, and he couldn't stand still. He danced from side to side and up and down, shaking the hat on his head. "Anancy, that's a wonderful new dance. Let us watch." The beans were really burning Anancy's head now. The bean juice was running down his face. He shook his hat and danced until finally he could stand it no more. "Yow!" Anancy shouted as he pulled the hat from his head. Beans flew everywhere. Then everyone stared at Anancy in surprise. His head was as bald as an egg. The beans had cooked his hair clean off. The neighbors began to laugh. Look at Anancy. He was hiding beans in his hat, and he cooked his hair right off his head. Anancy was so embarrassed that he ran into the garden and hid in the tall grass until it was dark. He stays in the tall grass a lot these days, and he isn't so crazy about beans anymore.